Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP loan. You may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hychak. And welcome to this edition of Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychak. Tonight we got a great guest on tonight. We got Christopher Noël on tonight, and we're going to be talking about Bigfoot, his behavior. What makes Bigfoot do what he does, the voodoo that he does so well. So we're going to be talking with him at the bottom of the hour. You want to hang around for that. We got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different odd things to get to this show. But first I have to say, Doug, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Joel. How are you on this?
I am surviving.
Crazy January day.
It is a crazy it's a crazy winter. It's nice and warm, and I will take it.
It was a crazy day, and that's all we're going to say, right?
Oh, insanity, mass hysteria, dogs and cats living together.
Yeah.
Mass hysteria. Yes. Yeah. Remember Ghostbusters? Bill Murray busts into the mayor's, the governor or the mayor of New York's office, says it's a mass hysteria out there. Dogs and cats living together. Things are going crazy. Yeah, it's a great scene.
It's a good way to describe it. It really is.
It is a good way to describe it. But we got other things to describe that are just such strange things. Doug, have you ever met someone that's just so pessimistic, kind of dark? You know, where you know, darkness is like where they live, kind of thing?
Yeah, I have. I got some dark letters today.
Oh, well, that's
just people
not
that
good.
They type a letter to you, and they get angrier and angrier, and they tell you they're getting angrier. And they describe how they're and then they calm down on the letter.
Who would ever be mad at you?
Oh no, they weren't mad at me. No. Okay. They were just describing being mad at something.
Because I was gonna say, if anyone knows you, they love you. You're one of the most endearing people I know.
Well, that's good.
So you know. So, dark people with dark personality traits respond to the pandemic in different key ways, it says here. While we're living through the same pandemic, the past few months, not all of us have responded to the fallout the same way. In a recent small study suggests there are some distinct differences in the way people with dark personality traits react to COVID-19. You might be saying, but Joel, what are these dark traits you speak of? Well, that's easy. Crazy people. Like nuts people. Like narcissists, psychopaths, sadists. Things such as that. They do pretty good during the pandemic.
And why is that, Joel?
Because they're already in a dark place. So, you know, like a sadist obviously loves, the pain. But I'll read here.
Okay.
But can these personality traits predict how individuals respond on a global crisis? Looking at 402 individuals, and let me get rid of that ding, ding, bing, bong, because I am a radio professional after all, sometimes. Let me get rid of this. It's just an iHeart email yelling at me. Okay, looking at 402 individuals in the United States, aged 18 to 78, researchers from the University of Mississippi found there were some subtle but noticeable differences linked to these personality traits, Doug. From cleaning behaviors to the mood, it was all different. Our findings indicate that during the initial stages of the pandemic in the United States, dark personalities differently kind of predicted what was going to happen, but they were okay with it. I'm paraphrasing a little bit because there's some wordy scientific crap going on here. Basically, they're saying they weren't all that hugely affected by it.
Huh. So you're saying that people have a dark personality, don't care? No?
They care, but I guess what they're saying is they mentally handled it better than some in the study.
So then doesn't that make them an optimist?
No, because like the sadist was okay with it happening to other people because they're already kind of like, crap. Like
so,
that.
Okay, there's a big difference between making somebody happy and just dealing with it. That's what you're getting at, right?
Exactly. Our findings indicate that during the initial stages of the pandemic, the United States dark personality differences, right? Emotional responses to the pandemic, the author writes in their paper published online ahead of this printing November. This came out in November 2020, this study. It's just now hitting the internet. These patients that they recruited online, by the way, that's important. I don't know why they have to distinct that. We recruited these people online. The researchers had individuals fill out a questionnaire about their feelings, thoughts, and behaviors during the pandemic. And their dark personality traits were ranked amongst using the Dirty Dozen measure.
Which is?
I'm not quite sure what the Dirty Dozen measure is. And they really don't.
Doesn't it tell us what they are?
Well, it measures it's basically an assessment of sadistic personalities. It will tell you basically how, I guess, crazy these people are. This Dirty Dozen measure.
And
it doesn't really go into it in the article.
Then what is the article worth then?
The article, I will tell you, the Dirty Dozen measure. Okay. There has been, it's a test that will tell you from 1 to 100 how you handle dark times. If you're a normal individual during this crisis, I went to the actual website of the people that created the Dirty Dozen because I knew you were going to ask that. If you're a normal functioning human being that has empathy and fear and cares and really worries about things happening, you would score a 20 on that. Meaning lower on the scale you go, the more functioning, I don't want to say normal because that's such a broad term, but the more feelings you might have and the more trepidation you might have about a subject. But if you score...
But just hang on. That could also mean you're pessimistic.
It could, but wouldn't that also be one of those personality traits? I mean, of doom and gloom already, so why would I care?
I don't know. What about the people that's all they want to talk about?
Is the pandemic?
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely fear.
Okay, so it's fear, but are they a dark personality or are they a more uplifting personality?
I think that they're a worried personality.
Oh, see, I'm all confused.
Because, if you're worried about something, most of us will want to talk about it quite a bit if there's something bothering us, right? Now, we all know that the news, the mainstream news, has used the pandemic to fearmonger to some extent.
Yeah.
Well, am I right or am I right?
There's no doubt.
And so that has really stoked a lot of people's doom and gloom factor. So if you're normal, you're really going to have a worried feeling about this pandemic. You're really going to want to see a good outcome with this pandemic.
Yeah, you're going to want
to score under that 20 or under. You're normal. Then if you go to 30 to 50, you're somewhat abnormal, but maybe you should be worried about, a little bit more than you are, but you're still worried. Now, once you're past that 50 threshold, oh boy, that's where we got problems. If you're scoring from 50 to 100, you could very well be a sick puppy. that doesn't seem to really have a care in the world what happens to anyone else.
Did you take the test?
I did. And I scored 15.
You did? Did you really?
I did. I did.
Oh, you're going to have to email that to me.
You don't believe I'm a caring, loving individual, Doug?
I guarantee I'll score a 14.
A 93.
No. A 14. I'll beat yours.
But that's the Jersey Dozen test. And so if you score, and what they do is they use different scenario questions and how you'd react, and you give your initial gut reaction to that situation. What you believe. You don't overthink it, you just answer it. And that is
Joel, okay, have you ever taken one of these MPI tests? It's a personality
I can't say I ever have.
Like if you go through a divorce and you got kids, they make you take it. And it's But this test was devised back, God, I'm just guessing, but probably in the 40s.
Oh, you're speaking of the MMPI, the Minnesota, whatever it is. Yes, I've heard of it.
It's a personality kind of scoring.
Yep. And they ask the same question, I'm told. There's like 5 different questions they ask, just in different ways.
Maybe. But all I know is the questions are so bizarre. And then they have questions that you're like, what? Are your stools black and tarry? And you're like, what does this have to
what does this have to do with my mood?
It's just so weird. The whole thing
is odd.
You take it because you have to.
Yeah.
Every question you're like, what?
Yes. You're like, what the hell?
Have you ever lied is one of the questions, as I remember.
Oh boy.
Of course you're gonna put who in the hell's gonna go no?
Yes. Right.
It doesn't say,
okay.
It didn't say like, have you ever lied today? It's like, have you ever
lied, period. Blanket statement.
How many times did we lie when we snuck Oreo cookies out of the pantry?
Yes. So true. Who hasn't?
Exactly.
Even white lies are still lies.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no really lie measure because it is what it is. It's a lie.
I want to see these questions.
They are interesting because they're like long form word questions. You read the scenario, and you give your gut reaction to your feeling on that.
Can you relay one of those questions?
Like when I took it, because the questions are never the same because they vary up the test. So I mean, it's for everybody else, it's a random scenario generator basically. Like mine, one of them was you observe. One of the odd ones was you observe a small child stealing a Snickers bar. How do you feel about that? Well, it's wrong, but it's also a small child. They don't know any better. And then you're supposed to really give your feeling on that. What's wrong with it?
But did you just put a yes or no answer, or did you?
No, they want you to write.
Oh, okay.
Your feeling, like. Boom! This is my feeling on this.
How do they score? How do they score such a test?
I have no idea. It's the strangest test out there, but I had to take it because I was reading the article.
Let's move on.
You don't want to talk anymore about the darkness of people.
No, it's turning me dark.
So, nutshell answer really quickly, just for the listeners that might be interested, even though you're not.
All right, I'll shut up.
It is basically. The darker you are, the better you mentally fare during times of crisis, such as a global catastrophe.
Oh, so that's good.
So, it's good, but it's bad. So it's one of those things. So yes. Anyhow, moving along. Next story. Now, are you a big fan of renewable energy? Do you think that we should move towards that, or?
If it's truly renewable and not something that doesn't make a ton of pollution to get a little bit of energy, kind of don't make sense. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Propaganda energy that doesn't. Those windmills, are we really saving anything? Have you seen one of those things?
I've seen several. We have a bunch of them where I live.
Yeah, well, we've got some
And
pop around here.
yeah, and they are really ugly to look at, number one. But if they do what they claim to do, I guess it's just a necessary evil.
Yeah, but have
If
you
they
seen,
claim to be as good
Joe,
as they
have you
are.
seen one blade on a truck? Just
Oh, they're
one blade.
huge. They're
Oh
they're
my,
giant. Yeah, they're as long as the semi-trailer, and that's 53 feet.
yeah, it's insane.
That is just absolutely huge, and I have seen them going down the highway. Well, now, would you ride on a train that's powered by poo?
Sure.
Trains powered by human waste and discarded food could be introduced to Britain's railway network under plans to phase out dirty diesel engines.
Sounds good.
Amid plans to phase out the dirty diesel engines that we all hate, trains run on gas made from human and animal waste and discarded food could join the rolling stock of Britain's railway. There's a catch. It smells like poo. I mean, it does have an aroma that might be undesirable to people.
Well, then I am going to get off that train immediately. I'll leap off.
Yeah, well, this is what they're going to call the Bio Ultra rail car.
Okay.
Is the brainchild of the team of engineers led by Worcester-based Ultra Light Rail Partners, and will be able to carry up to 120 passengers. Now, that is kind of small. Because you think of a train, and what one of those can carry hundreds of people. This one's relegated to 120 people. That just doesn't seem like a very good trade-off to be smelling like poo.
Okay. Can you explain how they're converting poo to energy?
I would imagine, this is what it says here, is they are composting it, but what they're doing is they are not necessarily using the poo directly. They're using the biomethane gas that is created by the decaying waste to power the train.
Methane.
It's a methane, but it smells like a big fart.
Perfect.
Because, of course, that's what makes your burps. That's what makes your toots smell like toots.
Yeah.
Methane.
It's, okay, we're done.
You're done with that, huh?
We're done.
No renewable energy for you. All right. Moving right along here. Harvard professor says an alien visited in 2017 and more are coming.
Okay,
now first signs of
Joel,
okay,
stop.
Yeah.
That was clickbait. See,
what I have to do, folks that might be listening, is I have to find stories that appease my overlord, Doug. and as you can see, he has the housefly attention span. So unless it grabs him in the first 3 sentences, it's doomed.
It grabbed me. I clicked on that thing on my own without any help from you, and it totally was clickbait. We've all known about. Well, you can continue, but it's something we've all known about forever.
That an alien showed up? Only one?
No.
I mean, just Mork from Ork?
Read the article and I'll make my comments.
When the first sign of intelligent life visits us from space, it won't be a giant saucer hovering over New York. More likely, it will be an alien civilization's trash. Basically, the rejects.
Yeah?
Yeah. A.P. Loeb, chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy, believes he already found some of that garbage. In his upcoming book, Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, out January 26th, by the way, the professor lays out a compelling case for why an object that has recently wandered into our solar system was not just another rock, but actually a piece of alien technology that they didn't want anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've read this article, haven't you?
Well, I knew about this for, 6 months. It's this Oumuamua, or however you pronounce it. asteroid that looks like a Snickers bar.
Do you believe it's real? Legit?
Well, I know the rock is, but I don't know what it is. But, okay, the article said, alien visits Harvard professor. And I click on it, and it's like, oh, my God, really?
Yeah, I understand.
Yes, there's no evidence. It's nothing but a rock. Yeah, it did some weird things. Like it flung away.
Flung away.
It was a weird shape, okay? And
Gotcha.
probably from outside our galaxy.
So basically, we're aliens' dumping ground is what he's saying.
Yeah, I don't know.
So like if they're getting rid of some old tech, like that's like us throwing away an old DVD player, we just gotta chuck it in the landfill. They'll shoot their old tech at us.
But what evidence are they citing that it was some alien technology?
Well, he claims to have found it.
Oh, he was the founder of it.
Yeah, he claims to have found some of this alien garbage.
Well, it was one object.
Well, he claims he found it.
Well, I claim I found it.
Well, I claim I found it.
Well,
we all found it.
Yeah. Anyhow, it's just, I don't know. It's the ultimate clickbait article. It was a rock.
It is. It is the ultimate clickbait article. And I would like to have this guy on the show.
Okay. Yeah. Good idea.
Get him on the show. We could talk about what kind of trash he's picking up on the side of the cosmic highway.
But look, now I would be embarrassed.
Why would you be embarrassed?
Because you'd probably play the clip of saying dumb stuff.
I would never do that to you.
Oh my God.
Ever. I would never do that to you. Not one time.
It would be,
as I'm crossing my fingers.
It would be different if they could say, well, it did this. It made right angle turns. Yes. It's got a reflective surface. It's got right angles.
Okay. I get it. All right, moving along here.
I didn't say any of that.
I know you didn't. You didn't.
The article doesn't.
I know, that's what I just said.
But it did fling.
It did fling. It flinged away. Flung away. Would you have another kid, Doug, for $100,000?
Depends if I was broke. I've got 6 already. No thanks.
South Korea is offering a grant of nearly $100,000 for couples who have at least 3 children. So you can't just have one; you have to have 3 of them. According to local press reports, South Korea network KNN reports Wednesday the city of Changwon, the capital of South Gyeonggi province, is combating the problem of a declining population with financial incentives.
Okay, was this North Korea or South Korea?
This is South Korea, because no one wants to be born in North Korea.
No, I was wondering.
I wouldn't want to be.
100 grand.
So, yeah, $100,000, but you gotta have 3 of them.
3.
Yeah, you gotta create 3 children.
So it's like $33,000 per child.
Now I have several children like you. And I have 3, and they cost a lot of money. Kids, God, I love them. But I would say I am well north of that $100,000.
Oh my God, yes.
So it is really, because this is why I want to read it. Having children is an expensive proposition beyond the $100K. It might sound attractive. Hey, we'll get $100,000, have 3 kids. The $100,000 doesn't last very long.
Plus, if they start shopping organic, that's gone. That's gone in a half a month.
Right? They could ride the train then.
Well, yeah, you could ride the poo train.
You could ride the poo train because they're eating organic. It'd be just fine then.
So where are we supposed to go with this article?
Well, the reason why I brought it up is because $100,000 is not that much money to have 3 children. But getting back to the article, the problem is the couple that gives birth to one child gets 30% of that. You can get 30% of the $100,000, which of course everyone knows is $30,000.
Yep.
For one child. But in order to get the full $100,000, you have to have 3 children. Now they're doing this big child birth drive because evidently over the last few years they've had a major decline in live births. South Korea has. And I don't think I would do it for $100,000. No, I think if they up that to be $100 million.
Yeah, you got to talk to your wife anyhow.
Well, yeah, you got to somehow convince them.
Yeah.
To be a willing participant in this.
Doesn't really matter what you want anyhow.
No, ultimately no, not really.
Yep.
Not really. I know this because our youngest son, I was informed that we're having a child, and it doesn't matter my thoughts on it. It's going to happen basically, and yeah, it just shows. Anyhow, that is what's strange to me.
Yeah, it's not that weird.
That is weird. Come on.
Not that weird.
You got the Harvard guy running around with flinging garbage. You got the crazy people that are doing just fine. The end of the world's here and they're doing fine.
Yeah,
Got the poo train rolling down the track.
I don't want to. Oh, God, I cannot unhear that. Ugh. Anyhow, let's talk about our guest.
Yes, let's do that. Christopher Noel's on the show with us tonight, and he is an author. Noel, sorry about that. He is an author. He's written several fiction and several nonfiction books. He also has a master's degree, and he is really quite an interesting individual. I had a lot of fun talking with him during sound check. He will dive into the mind of a Sasquatch with us, and how he became his amazing theories on how and what and why a Sasquatch behaves. He has some interesting theories on that. Christopher Noel holds that master's degree, like I said earlier, in philosophy from Yale University. That's pretty prestigious. Not everybody's gone to Yale there, Doug.
No.
And taught for nearly 20 years at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. So he has some credentials behind him. And I'm looking forward to talking with him in about 3 minutes here.
Me too. He's thinking out of the box.
Yes, he is. He's got a lot of interesting... I've never stopped to think, why does Bigfoot do what the Bigfoot does?
Yeah.
What drives that, their behaviors?
Yeah, why do they hide?
Yeah. I mean, granted, they were social distancing long before it was cool.
Yeah. No, it's just, I've always been impressed with his work. I really have. It's always impressive.
Yeah. Well, Bigfoot he's us in a lot of ways. They're not that different from us by all accounts. Other than having hair and being big and stuff like that, but there's definitely a society there. There's things that mirror us in a lot of ways.
I was listening to a report today on a podcast where the woman said it covered the entire highway, was kind of crouched down, and it was laying there on the road with one hand on one white line and its foot on the other white line.
Damn.
And I'm thinking, yeah, damn. She said, boy, this isn't it. She goes, this isn't in my database. As they approached it.
Wow.
And then it looked at them. She had a witness in the car. Looked at them, and she said it was the creepiest thing she had ever seen.
That is creepy. I don't know what I would do if I came up on a Bigfoot lane in the middle of the road.
Yeah, and that was on Sasquatch Chronicles. A great podcast.
Yeah. Check that out. If you've never heard it, definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's just witnesses that tell their story and pretty much uninterrupted. And, if you're into that, it's the best podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I've listened to a few of those in the past, and some of those reports are definitely chilling.
That's addicting.
It is addicting, that show. I find it really fun to listen to. I have to listen to that particular episode because I've never heard of anybody seen a Bigfoot laying that big. I mean, that speaks to the size, too.
She said her
white line to white line.
She said her husband was 275 pounds, 6'4". She said it would have been like 3 of her husbands.
Damn. That's a big, big beast. We got to run a break. We come back. We're going to have Christopher Noël with us. Don't go anywhere. Be right back right after this.
Hi.
When it comes to starting your morning off right, Wendy's is always the best choice. And now that our sweet and savory honey butter chicken biscuit is only $1.99, you have no excuse to get your breakfast anywhere else. It's freshly prepared with sweet honey butter and all-white meat chicken on a flaky biscuit. It's never been easier to steer clear of bad breakfast. Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's and get the breakfast you deserve. The $1.99 honey butter chicken biscuit.
Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours. A la carte only, not valid in a combo.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP loan. You may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychek. Tonight we got a great guest on tap as we were talking about the first hour. We're having Christopher Noël on tonight, and he is not just another pretty face, but he's a really accomplished author. He has that master's degree from Yale University, where he taught for 20 years at Vermont College for Fine Arts. He actually has a philosophy degree from Yale, and man, that's a very prestigious school, by the way. Congratulations to you there, Christopher. And he also has written extensively on the subject of Bigfoot, but we're going to be kind of going into the Bigfoot behaviors with Christopher. Why a Bigfoot kind of does what it does. And I got to ask you right off the top there, Christopher, what brought you to the Bigfoot table? With that background of philosophy, how did you come to Bigfoot?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm honored to be a guest tonight.
Well, thank you.
I've been fascinated by this species ever since I was a child of 10 or 11 and saw the Patterson film for the first time. So most people that you ask say that that's what first captivated their imagination. And so I always was extremely curious to learn more, to figure out if there was a way to, systematically study the species. I always thought you had to just kind of be lucky to be driving at 2 a.m. on a backcountry road and have one cross in front of you. But then I learned in 2005 that there were expeditions you could go to through the BFRO. And I began going around with those guys to various places all over North America, and learned. I didn't have many experiences of our hairy next of kin, our cousins, during those expeditions, but I learned from a lot of veteran researchers what they were like, what their habitat and behavior were like. And I went on, I think it was 8 expeditions in the first year and a half, completely blowing out my budget, and flying around Northern California to Arizona to Florida to Pennsylvania, et cetera, et cetera. And I learned a lot, and my fascination level only continued to rise. And then I began to learn from just networking with people that there were spots called habituation sites, where the local residents of a house, usually way out in the country, but not always, began to experience regular visitations from their local Sasquatch group. And I got in touch with some of these people and was able to visit some of them, especially this one woman in Texas who lived by herself in a little house in Texas, and learned that this was a kind of a more direct, more fruitful avenue to learning about the species and having direct interactions with them than going on these expeditions. And I eventually was lucky enough to have 6 different families contribute to my first book, which is called Our Life with Bigfoot, all about the kinds of things that people typically experience at these habituation sites. And just for listeners who may not be familiar with that term, it's kind of related to what Jane Goodall did with the chimpanzees and Diane Fossey did with the mountain gorillas, which is just to reduce each side's instinctive fear and alienation from one another, to kind of familiarize each species with the peaceful intentions of the other, so that they can just kind of be more at ease when they interact. But this at Sasquatch habituation sites, this doesn't mean that they come out in the open like Jane Goodall's chimpanzees did. They always, at most, will interact with us indirectly, or in the middle of the night when we're asleep, they'll bang the side of the house, or throw stones on the roof, or tap on the windows, or run their fingernails on the window screen, or peek in windows, freaking people out. But then they're gone. So they never allow us to directly, hang out with them and have a beer.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
So I became fascinated. No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, before you went on, did you have experiences during these BFRO expeditions?
No, I only heard distant knocks and howls. That was enough to thrill me at that stage of my kind of initiation or education into being near the species. But after that, in the next, in the stage where I was investigating habituation sites, I had a lot more direct experiences, including at this Texas site. I managed to film an individual that was spying on us when we were at a big bonfire. This huge individual was crouched down behind a wood pile, and I had a thermal camera at the time. And I would occasionally go away from the firelight and scan the tree line there at the edge of the yard. And I've kicked myself every day since then for not recognizing what I had on the camera. I was expecting or hoping to see an enormous upright figure, like hiding behind a tree. But instead, this figure was down on the deck, on the ground, hunched down behind this woodpile, and sticking her, I think it was a female, sticking her left arm out and flexing her hand. And I didn't realize what I was 30 feet away from at the time. It wasn't until I got back home and I looked over the footage that I realized, oh my God, that we were being spied on very, very close by. And so, of course, if I had realized it at the time, I would have approached and gotten great footage. But that's if anyone's interested, that's called the woodpile Sasquatch footage, and it's thermal, which means it picks up heat signatures rather than light signatures. So you can see the hot eyes. Every warm-blooded animal on thermal, the eyes stand out very brightly, and you can see the arm, and you can see exactly the kind of the opening in the woodpile that she was looking at us through as we roasted marshmallows and hot dogs at the bonfire.
Wow! So you were able to pick up the entire body, or just a small portion? Because I would imagine the wood. Yeah, I would imagine the wood blocked much of the heat signature.
Yeah, so you only see the left arm and the two eyes and the top of the head. It's comparatively cooler than the two eyes, so you can see it. You can see it's darker, but you can definitely see the outline of it, and the eyes really shine out. And luckily, there was a tree right next to the woodpile, and later we managed to measure the width of that tree at 6 inches. And so, by using that scale, you can tell that the eyes of this individual, they were right next to that tree, so there was no distortion, or the eyes were 4.75 inches apart from midpoint to midpoint, whereas human eyes are average 2.25 inches apart. So this was a huge creature. But the woman at this house had seen them occasionally by day, but mostly and fleetingly, not enough to go get your camera. And people who don't understand say, well, if it's true, there are habituation sites like this, and they come around frequently, why can't you just get
that was going to be my question. Why does nobody ever take a... Yeah, because I met a gal, a young lady some years ago that was telling me all about how she had Bigfoot coming around, and she would hand feed them and hang out together and do this and do that. And finally I said, well, why the hell aren't you taking a picture? She says, that never occurred to me to take a picture of one. Well, it sure would occur to me.
Yeah, sure would to me too. There's different answers for different people. Some people are exaggerating their experience. Sure. And some people have a kind of sense of honor and a sort of obligation toward this creature not to violate their obvious distaste when it comes to cameras and being photographed or filmed. They seem to have this deep-seated instinct against being photographed or filmed. I don't know how I think they can read our intentions and know that it's a form of capture of them or a trick against them.
Why do you think would, Christopher? Why do you think that they would care if they're being photographed or not?
I think it just stems from the deep-rooted and millennia-old kind of what's the word? Sort of desire to maintain distance from us and not to be captured. I mean, unlike other indigenous peoples, the Sasquatch people have never been rounded up. Never. Occasionally it seems that some have been shot, but they haven't been, like slaughtered on any mass scale like we did to the Native Americans. So the only way they could have achieved that success is by being, more evasive and more interested in slipping any kind of noose that we can put around them, whether it's a photographic noose or a physical noose, than we can even imagine. I mean, they have to be better than the best ninja in order to have survived all these centuries and thousands of years, and remained free and distinct from us and undominated by us.
Well, what was it, Christopher, that really made you want to do all of the research? I mean, you did a lot of field work, tons of it. I was impressed as everybody that watches your film. I mean, you were very devoted. But were you confused by their behavior?
No, I was fascinated by it. I learned more and more over the years. I've been at this now for 15 years, and I've learned. I've been a student. I think of myself as a student of the Sasquatch species, and steadily over time, I've learned more about them, and I just become more interested.
We saved big money with our Progressive Home and Auto Bundle and used the cash to take a family vacation
to Hawaii.
Who's up for a luau?
Yay!
This is not a real testimonial. Sure, customers can save big money with Progressive, but not enough to go to Hawaii. They'll probably use it for things like the mortgage and groceries, or even a travel magazine, so at least they can see pictures of Hawaii.
Aloha!
Yes, say hello to those beautiful Hawaiian beaches in that magazine. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Whatever you're funny, Peacock's got it exclusively. Stream classic sitcoms like The Office, Parks and Recreation, and 2.5 Men. Plus, catch Peacock original comedies like AP Bio and Saved by the Bell. For all your exclusive comedy faves, go to peacocktv.com and get started.
Interested and kind of devoted to a devoted student over time, and so once I had learned a lot about these habituation sites and put out the book Our Life with Bigfoot, I began to get information locally where I live in northern Vermont that there are sightings right around here, and it was really kind of ironic and comical that I'd flown all around North America looking for the species, and it turns out that they're right in my backyard, and. So for the past 5 years, I've really focused my research here at home. There's a ravine 2 miles from my house where I have interacted with them now and then, not always, but there are periods of time where when I go in there, they're always making noise behind thick screens of trees. So they don't come out in the open, and they communicate indirectly through sound and either vocalizations or wood knocks. And I had one that every single morning when I would go there, he would make these very distinct drumming knocks against trees behind a thick screen of trees. And he was from what I could hear, he was about 150 feet away, but it was too thick to see him. And people say, why didn't you just run toward him? And and it's because I wanted to establish a trust relationship with him. I didn't want to ruin that. I knew that, A, if I started running toward him, he'd be 100 yards away before I got 20 feet. And B, that would probably destroy the chances of any further interaction in the future. So I just kind of sat and was receptive and friendly, and he rewarded me with very consistent daily displays of his presence.
Now, skeptics...
And in this...
Christopher will say, well, it could be a grouse, could be this, but I've heard all of your audio. It's amazing. I mean, they're clearly drumming with sticks.
Yeah, sticks are bigger pieces of wood, like big limbs of wood. It's a very, very definitely wood on wood sounds. And so I was able to film a lot. I have a video, if anyone's interested, called Sasquatch Up Close and Personal, My 2 Years of Learning in the Ravine. So that's where I have kind of compiled all the best experiences that I had there. I had pine cones thrown at me for many mornings in a row. I would have drumming from one side, and I would have pine cones coming arcing through the sky toward me from the whole other side, behind another screen of trees. I was sort of surrounded, and some people say, well, "Weren't you scared? Didn't you think he was telling you to get out of there?" And no, I was delighted. I was thrilled to have the privilege of being played with by this this wonderful species, or an individual of the species. And he would throw. On 2 occasions, I saw the pine cones shooting up from behind the screen of trees up into the sky, but I failed to videotape that. But I did videotape one arcing down above me from above the tree that I was sitting under. So it came from the sky. And this guy was accurate. He was better than any major league pitcher. These things would come down right, like there'd be like 12 of them within 2 minutes, landing right in front of me or hitting me on the head.
Wow.
It was astonishing, and it was thrilling. It really was kind of like I just felt so honored,
to be pelted with pine cones.
Yeah, because they could have stayed quiet, and I would.
I was going to say, at least they weren't. I was going to say, Christopher, at least they weren't rocks.
I know. I kept thinking that. At first, I thought they were rocks, and then I finally saw one landing in front of me, and it was a darn pine cone. People might picture like the pine cones, the kind of fluffy ones, but those wouldn't go far, These were super ripe and green. Those really dense ones, heavy and dense, and you can throw them a long way, obviously, from what they did. And so it was great in the moment. It was frustrating because I couldn't really capture the exhilaration of the experience on video for YouTube, because people kept saying, "Well, those are just squirrels dropping those from the trees." When obviously I looked up in the trees to see if they were squirrels, and they weren't. And then I saw them coming up in the sky from the ground level. So it was terrific to be included in their routines like that, because they could have just been quiet and retiring, and I would have just sat there like an idiot, feeling like I was wasting my life. Yeah. So when you get confirmation like this, when you get dramatic confirmation like this, you just feel like, I haven't been wasting my time. This is all worth it, and this is exactly what I want to happen.
And so did your relationship with the Sasquatch in that area, did it continue to progress? Where they were showing maybe a little more of themselves, or is that about where it began and ended?
I'll tell you, it's a little bit of a long story, but we got time. Hey, we got time. The pine cones and the height of the drumming and knocking behavior was in August and September of 2014. And then everything kind of fell off once the leaves all fell, so there was less protection behind leaves. It was harder to conceal oneself. And so then then all winter I schemed on this way to hide a camera, and I got all this equipment, including a 200-foot video electric cable to this little lipstick camera. And I drilled a hole in a fallen tree, and I hid that camera inside there, and I actually buried the entire 200 feet under a few inches of soil, and ran it back to where I would normally sit the previous summer, and I had a laptop and the whole 9 yards, so I could see. And I had a battery pack, so I could turn on the camera, and I could just, when I wanted to, turn on the camera and see, because I had it back where he was obviously sitting, where the sound had been coming from before. Well, it seemed like a good idea, but people listening are already guessing what happened. Is all the activity stopped completely, and this too is all contained in that video, Sasquatch Up Close and Personal. So what happened was, it stopped. I gave it a few months. The idea was when I heard the knock, then I would turn the camera on, so there'd be no electricity in it beforehand, so they wouldn't sense the electricity. But I never did hear that knock. Finally, one day, I decided to just pull the camera out. I decided, okay, you win. I've been disrespectful and foolhardy. So I pulled the cable out and dragged it out of the woods. But one smart thing I did was I left an audio recorder behind when I dragged the cable out of the woods and took it to my car. And a while later, I went back and got the audio recorder. And on the audio, you can hear me dragging the cable out. And then I swear to you, like a minute and a half after the cable sound disappears, you hear a double knock, like an acknowledgement that, now I will return to knocking now that you're not trying to trap me and trick me with this camera.
No, Oh, sorry about that, Christopher. I was going to ask, when they knock around you, are they communicating with you or with each other?
I don't know. A lot of times it was just the one knocking and drumming behind that screen of trees, but sometimes at one morning there were 4 different locations of knocking. One up on the ridge behind me was going bam against trees, and the knocking one I called Music Man because he was drumming all the time. And then from 2 different locations around the compass, so I was surrounded, there were more knocks coming. So in that case, I don't know if they were communicating with each other to let each other know what their position was, or if they were just trying to speak, quote unquote, speak to me. I can't know that.
Interesting nonetheless.
But so it seems like I ruined the whole thing, but one of my best experiences happened even after I had the camera there in a whole different part of the ravine. I filmed a juvenile Sasquatch. And again, just like in the case of Texas, I didn't know what I had on the film because I didn't notice him with my eyeballs. I just got him on video. And he's a little black figure behind a little pine tree. And I was 88 feet away from that pine tree. But since I didn't see him, I didn't approach. And it was early morning, so the light wasn't good. And I didn't zoom the camera in because I didn't know to zoom there. And so it's not great footage. It's dim. The resolution isn't great. And I only caught 4 seconds of it because I was distracted by a coyote that at the same time ran down from the top of the ridge and stood right in front of me. It seemed like, you don't want to overinterpret these situations, but it seemed like the coyote was attempting to distract me from noticing the little Sasquatch. Wow. And many people have suggested that coyotes and Sasquatch are kind of what they call collaborator species, and that Sasquatch are to packs of coyotes what we are to like a pack of sled dogs or just our pets, our pet dogs, and kind of working together, working in concert with each other, and
kind of a symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the experience in the ravine. I'll stop blabbing now because I realize I'm dominating here. So you probably have more questions.
Do you believe that Sasquatch is a relative of ours at all? Do you think there's any human-like traits to Sasquatch other than of course, the form? But do you think that we're related to him, or her, or it?
I sure do. The best genetic findings that we have are performed by Melba Ketchum. And many people have written her work off for reasons that have nothing to do with her actual data. There's all sorts of prejudice against women. She doesn't have a PhD in genetics, but she's a forensic DNA expert who testified as an expert witness at many trials. And she undertook a DNA study where people in 2008 to 2012, people sent her lots and lots of organic samples that they got. And I can tell you some of those if you want after the summary of it. But and so she selected the 109 best organic samples, like hair and blood and saliva and tissue. And she sequenced the DNA, and it turns out from what she found that the well, there's mitochondrial DNA, which comes from the mother side, and then there's the nuclear DNA, which is it's 3 billion base pairs, and that comes from both parents. And the mitochondrial DNA she found in all the Sasquatch samples that she sequenced, and there were many, are human. And the nuclear DNA is not recognizably human. So what she concluded is that at some point in the past, and she estimates it around 15,000 years ago, there was a crossbreeding between human females and primates of another species that so far hasn't been discovered. It's not Neanderthal, it's not Denisovan. And so, we're discovering these early human offshoots every few years. Denisovans were only discovered 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then Homo floresiensis was discovered around the same time, and that's a small version of Homo, the genus Homo. And anyway, so her idea is that there's some primate species that's related enough to us that it was possible to reproduce between our species, but not close enough so that they produced something, with no hair and 5 and 6 feet tall instead of 7 to 10 feet tall, So everybody who there are different varieties. Some people see Sasquatch that look more like gorillas, and some people see them that look more like humans covered with hair. Mm-hmm. So there's a real spectrum of appearances and physical traits. But in terms of the DNA that has been analyzed, not just by Ketchum, but by others too, there's this human side, and then there's the non-human primate side. So originally, that concept would be that originally the offspring of this cross breeding would be half and half Homo sapiens and half Homo something else, but that primarily after that, down through the millennia, this Sasquatch would interbreed with one another, so that the human side, they're no longer 50-50. But because mitochondrial DNA is like this portal back to the mother and her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother on through the generations, that is still a positive ID of the origin, the sort of matriarch of the entire line, the entire species. So, and then people, the behavior is extremely human-like and intelligent in many ways, and so is their appearance. Many people
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Bodega, Alpha and Omega. Siamese sailors sell celery sandwiches. Sawing-a-bada serving platter.
Hey, Jamie?
Yes?
Did you want to try reading that line on the script there?
Oh, yeah, let's see. You could save big when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive, that one?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm just not warmed up yet. Shouldn't be long. Detector test.
Bundle your home and auto with Progressive today.
The marmot mangled my mushu pork pancake.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates.
Had them in their rifle sights and then been unable to shoot because so they'll say, like, it just looked like a man. I couldn't, or a woman. I couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, you get that a lot too. People that could have donned one, and just because there's too much like us.
Christian,
yeah, very much.
Did you ever try for feeding or gifting or some of the other methods to attract them?
Many times in the ravine, I left gifts and food, and different groups have different characteristics or different personalities. My group has never really. They would take some things every now and then, but they never left me gifts, and so I sort of stopped doing that. A lot of people have much success with gifting or feeding, but it didn't seem to work in this case. No, but I'm fascinated with cases that do work, like this woman who works out of Ohio and has a YouTube channel called Snow White Bigfoot. She will leave. She's had a years-long, quote-unquote, conversation with her local Sasquatch group by exchanging objects, which get taken and then replaced by objects that kind of look like them but aren't the same ones, or her objects get rearranged, and there's just this whole playful sort of chess game that goes back and forth between her and her local group, and it's fascinating to watch. She's posted 99 what she calls her Bigfoot diary videos on her channel, and so I recommend her highly for people to see how you can. It's quite possible to communicate with these folks, these hairy, large folks, but it's got to be indirect. It's got to be through mediation of objects.
Gotcha. No straightforward communication. Just it's got to be through something like you're saying, like a go-between.
Indirect communication. Yes, a go-between. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, or object communication.
Sure.
And so that's what it's so hard for people to understand. Like what a weird behavior profile that they seem to be drawn toward us as we're drawn toward them because of the profound kinship between our two species, and yet they also avoid direct contact like the plague. They just won't allow themselves to come in kind of as you say, straightforward contact with us. It's got to be oblique.
Why do you think that is? If there's no camera around, it's just you in the woods. Why so standoffish? I guess would be the question.
For Pete's sake, why don't you just come and talk to me? I know.
You know what I mean? Because you would think that after you built a rapport with them, that they wouldn't be so standoffish. Like it sounds like you spent 5 years in your area. Just in your area, let alone all the field research. You would think that there'd be a rapport built, some trust would be.
Well, you do make progress. I feel like I made progress with the one I call Music Man. Before I made the mistake of hiding that camera, I put hiding in quotes because he obviously knew it was there, and clammed up until the moment I removed the cables and the camera. But you get to a certain point, you make progress, but then there's an end point, there's a limit. There's always got to be that margin that they keep, this kind of primordial barrier of distance and concealment that they keep. And if they didn't, this mystery would have been cracked wide open hundreds of years ago. The only way they can accomplish what they have accomplished is to maintain that boundary. But over the years, I pondered.
I was going to say, would you say that they're more intelligent than we are?
There are many, many different kinds of intelligence, as I'm sure you do know, and they are more intelligent than us in many ways when it comes to what seems like a terrain management, probably a photographic memory for their territory, so that if one thing is changed, they can tell instantly, just as though you came into your house and somebody had gone number 2 on your rug. Like they know when you're trying to pull something on them. So I think they're geniuses in their niche, but they don't build computers or write symphonies or build skyscrapers, et cetera, et cetera. So so they don't have the same. It's just it's apples and oranges, but each one is uniquely qualified for its own realm of existence. And in terms of this two-sided coin of their behavior, where they seem drawn toward us, at these habituation sites, as I say, they come almost always at night, and they come close, and they slap the houses, and yet when you go outside, they run away. So, and they communicate through mediation. So I got to thinking over the years, well, I don't know of any other animal in the animal kingdom that has this two-sided thing. Like most animals either avoid us like the plague, end of story, or they come toward us and they can be domesticated or tamed. But to do both at the same time, and over the years I started to put the pieces together into a hypothesis or a theory that they have a lot of similarities to autistic human beings, and just in the sense not the kind of autism that makes people kind of dysfunctional, but the kind that we call autistic savants, where they are at a genius level within the domains that they focus on. So, human autistic savants can tell you what day of the week, January 4th of 1715 took place on. They can instantly make that calculation, and they can often exercise a photographic memory. There's on YouTube you can find this guy called the Human Camera, and he takes one flight over Milan, Italy, in a helicopter, and goes back into the studio and draws an absolutely scale replica of every detail of the skyline of Milan on a big paper on the wall, just from having seen it once. So there are all sorts of gifts that autistic human beings, especially on the upper level of intelligence, have that Sasquatch seem to display as well. Autistic people will often do what's called stimming, where they make repetitive motions. It's called self-stimulation, but not in a sexual sense, but just in a sense of soothing themselves by repetitive motions, like they'll sway back and forth, or they'll repeatedly flap their hands. And the one I filmed in Texas on the thermal camera, she was flexing her hand over and over and over, and many people have reported seeing them sway back and forth behind trees.
Like a self-soothing technique.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just one of many affinities that they seem to have with autistic people. They'll also do what's called, autistic people have display this trait called echolalia, where they will repeat after you. They'll, there's what's called immediate echolalia, where you'll say, "You can have some breakfast," and they'll say, "You can have some breakfast," right away. Or there's also delayed echolalia, where they'll watch a certain movie over and over, and then for years they'll quote lines from that movie. And Sasquatch, many reports have it that a family living at a habituation site will hear them. A kid will hear their mother calling them from the woods, and they'll go running out there, and nobody's there, and they come back to the house, and the mother's been in the house all the time. So the Sasquatch will like to kind of prank us, and mimicking our voices is one of the main ploys, one of the main things they like to do to get a rise out of us, is just to play. And so that kind of is an affinity to autistic people who will repeat, who will mimic, and let's see, there's many things. They sort of have this emotionless face, what's called the autistic stare, kind of a flat affect face, where they will just kind of stare. And, people have described certain emotional kind of expressions on the Sasquatch faces, but mostly they say they're just kind of impassive. Let me see. There's other affinities that are slipping my mind, but they'll come back at any moment.
Chris, we're talking about the mimicking, and that's one of the most common things that I hear. And plus, I remember years ago a native telling me that was something that has been passed down, that the natives translated, it was called syllable whispering, where you would talk and then they would hear their own voice. The natives would describe this from the forest. I don't know if you'd ever heard that, but
cool. No, I didn't hear that. That's good. Yeah, so you're definitely on the right track.
Yeah, so you're definitely on the right track. And I think that, you know, the other thing that I hear, and plus, I remember years ago a native telling me that was something that has been passed down, that the natives translated, it was called syllable whispering, where you would talk and then they would hear their own voice. The natives would describe this from the forest.
Cool. No, I didn't hear that. That's good.
No doubt. I mean, the stimming, I've witnessed that myself. Me and Yvette saw a Bigfoot at the side of the road, right where a stream emptied into Black Lake, and this thing was doing this motion over and over and over. It was waving its hands and its arms. And it looked like somebody who was trying to dry its coat sleeves.
Uh-huh.
And so...
Yeah, well, that's a good...
Yeah, so for me, the things that you're saying just keep connecting dots.
Well, many people, like you may know of Barbara Shoup. She's a researcher out in California, I believe, or is it Oregon? I forget. But she described in great detail seeing one of the moonlight swaying back and forth. And many of the people who participated in my book, Our Life with Bigfoot, described the very same thing. So it's common. You know Mike Green's thermal footage?
No, not by name.
Michael Green. Yeah, it's also called the squeaky thermal footage because they would leave squeaky toys for this visiting Sasquatch on this stump in the O'Hare National Park in southern Pennsylvania. And one night he finally got thermal footage of one just by setting the camera up on a tripod and then driving away for an hour and then coming back, and he got it coming and taking a candy bar from the stump. But it took a lot, even though nobody was there, it took this individual like 3 minutes to finally make the gradual, careful approach to the stump. And for a while it was swaying back and forth. So you can see that on YouTube under the Michael Green footage, and it's Green with an E on the end. Or you can look up the squeaky thermal footage, and you can see this thing swaying back and forth. So that's very common. But I just remembered the most important kind of link between human autism and Sasquatch behavior is this whole idea that we've talked about of indirect communication. Like, autistic people, especially profoundly autistic people, even if they're geniuses in certain respects, are famous for not being able to make direct contact, like eye contact or direct communication. But once you establish a kind of a medium of communication, like cards with symbols on them, or a keyboard, or other things that counselors will employ or parents will employ, you can break open the potential of communication with the child or the older individual through using symbols, using objects. And this is exactly what happens at Snow White Bigfoot's place in Ohio, and what happens with many people who leave out arrangements of stones, and they come back and the stones are very intelligently rearranged, obviously not by a raccoon, or they'll leave out a jar of peanut butter, and they'll come back and the peanut butter will be gone. There'll be a circle of feathers, a perfect circle of feathers. And so this kind of object communication takes place both on the playing field of a neurotypical person communing or communicating with an autistic person, and between our species and the Sasquatch species. So my hunch, and it's going to be hard to prove, is that way back when we had, in the beginning, our common ancestor between the patriarch or the male progenitor of the Sasquatch species and the human female, the common ancestor between those two had some sort of a primordial version of autism that occasionally, manifests itself in us today, and manifests itself similarly, but also in some respects differently in the Sasquatch species, so that we can perceive, striking similarities between the autism versions of our two species, but there are also differences. Like, for instance, Sasquatch groups work together very well. So it's not the type of autism where you're solitary, like human autistic people tend to be, and it's solitary, but seeking some sort of relationship, but having a hard time and having to do it indirectly,
So is there a Bigfoot society? I mean, is there a social structure then, is what you're saying, for Bigfoot?
Well, from what we know, and of course, there's so much we don't know, probably more than we do know. But from what we know, they're usually in groups. If you know, I filmed that juvenile, which, by the way, is included in that same video I've mentioned before. And I bet you anything, any amount of money, that there was an adult very nearby. In fact, when I was being distracted by the coyote, the time I filmed that juvenile, there were wood knocks and branch breaks up on top of the ravine, on top of the ridge, just out of sight. And I would bet you that that's the mother or the father trying to alert the kid or distract me from knowing that the kid was there. Anyway, but so it's not the kind of autism that where they have to remain kind of isolated in their own bubble. They are just they're just kind of precocious at coordinating their groups to hunt and to communicate about where people are. Like sometimes there'll be two hikers coming in, and you'll hear two wood knocks, and you figure, well, there's a kind of a sentinel individual Sasquatch alerting the group that two people just came in. So they work together very, very well. So it seems as though for
Christopher, what about organizing? Like I have an autistic nephew who loves to line up these little animals, and he'll do it for hours.
Well, Doug, thank you. You just reminded me of another huge aspect that had slipped my mind, which is the stick and tree structures.
Yeah.
Human autistic people, like your nephew, will structure their environment in a way to kind of create order out of a sense of chaos, like to make a familiar place that they can be and feel like it's theirs, because there's this sense I've gotten from reading memoirs of autistic people that there's like this encroachment of chaos from other people and just the world in general is too much to handle. So if they line up toys, then that's at least a little piece of order that they can hang their hat on, their psychic hat on, and feel soothed. And we find throughout Sasquatch territory, we find stick and tree structures that are also, I think, that also serve a similar function. That's my hypothesis.
Well, because there seems to be no reason for them. You see these teepees that are just full of 100 sticks, but yet they're not really going to offer any protection. You see
from the elements, I know.
Yeah, you see these fences where the sticks are lined up, just beautifully lined up. And I wonder, what are these for?
Exactly. They are like I'm sure they have different ones have different functions. Like some could be like territorial boundaries, or the sort of signature of a clan telling the other clan that this is our territory, or they can be aesthetic productions like art, or they can point toward water or indicate where there's good hunting, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I think they're also just satisfying to make. They're very they're our next of kin on Earth, and we love to make things. I think they love to make things, and they're higher primates with huge hands and huge brains, and it would be shocking if they didn't use the materials in their world if they didn't manipulate their environment in certain ways that are then easily spotted if you know what you're looking for.
Yep.
And many people say, well, structures, you're jumping to conclusions because structures can easily be made by Boy Scouts or kids or First Nations people a long time ago, and they're still there and stuff like that. So when you find these suspicious structures, you can't jump to the conclusion that it's Sasquatch until you take the next step, which is leaving an audio recorder or several out in that forest and then listening to night after night. And if they're Sasquatch, if Sasquatch are the builders of these structures, then eventually, and usually it doesn't take that long in my experience, you begin to hear in the middle of the night either wood knocks or trees being pushed over on a still night, or vocalizations that are obviously not kids, even aside from the fact that kids wouldn't be doing this at 2:30 in the morning.
Sure.
And then you can put two and two together and say, well, this is part of Sasquatch territory. And one of the shocking revelations or paradigm shifts that both myself and other researchers have come to over the past few years is just how close physically Sasquatch operate. They plant their flags in territory, in forests right next to us. And by flags, I mean these structures, these various kinds of stick and tree structures. And then they will circulate. I mean, I think they're always on the move, so they circulate around. And these structures are, in many cases, representing or demarcating part of their circuit. So you audio record this forest, and then you hear them returning now and then. There's different periods. Like sometimes they come every night, sometimes they come every 2 weeks. But I just think they're on the move for hunting purposes and just for not being easy to find. Like how terrorists will sleep in a different place every night. Well, not terrorists. Well, yeah. Well, anybody like on the run from potential danger in the human sphere. Often you hear they'll sleep a different house every night. I think it's similar.
Does that explain all of the structures that are so commonly found near walking path? In suburban.
Yeah, well, some are probably. Sorry, come again?
No, I was saying in suburban areas, I've noticed you can go back in the woods 100 feet in really, literally thick bramble. I don't think kids would be playing back there because it's full of thorns and, thick brush and mosquitoes and poison ivy. And yet you find these complex structures that are made of sometimes of, 1,000 sticks with the bark peeled off.
I'm glad you mentioned the bark. Yeah, that's a huge tell is when you find the bark peeled off, because if kids are going to make them or grown-ups, they're not going to spend hours painstakingly peeling the bark off. But I think that's...
Is the bark peeling part of their possible autistic parallel? Because that takes so much time to do.
It could be like one of those obsessive little jobs they give themselves. Like there's a relationship between autism and OCD.
Right.
And there's like these obsessive behaviors that Sasquatch seem to engage in. But also I think they eat the bark. Lots of bark has minerals and medicinal qualities. We got aspirin from willow bark. And also it makes the structures last longer because with the bark on, they can't dry, the sticks and limbs, branches can't dry out as fast.
Right.
And they're more apt to rot. So I think if they peel them off, they'll just dry out faster and last longer. Just two things. In case the listeners are interested, I have this book called A Field Guide to Sasquatch Structures that features drawings of the 50 most common types of structures in North America. And also, if people are interested in what I was mentioning before about the autistic savant connection to Sasquatch, I have a book called the Sasquatch Savant Theory.
Interesting. No, what's the Bigfoot curse?
Well, some people mean by that you have all the best of intentions and the best gear, and you have the batteries all charged up, and then you get out in the field, and suddenly all your equipment malfunctions. Your batteries are drained.
Gotcha, because that was an interesting chapter in part of chapter 4 of your book, the NextofKinNextDoor. You mentioned the Bigfoot curse.
Well, I mean that's a whole other aspect of them, and it doesn't seem to have to do with autism. It's where they seem to be able to produce electromagnetic energy, or if not produce it, at least manipulate it or wield it in some way. Because people get the sensation, will report being quote unquote zapped, where you suddenly are either immobilized or sickened. People get down on their knees. Some people even throw up. And sometimes people experience missing time when they're suddenly hit by this field of energy. And it sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's very concrete when you experience it yourself. It's not airy fairy or mystical. It's like a punch in the gut. And so that some people think that's infrasound. Like lions can immobilize a gazelle by roaring really low, and it affects the central nervous system. But I think it's electromagnetic because infrasound, which is this low sound below where we can hear, that doesn't drain batteries, and that doesn't make your cameras suddenly freeze up. And this does happen frequently in the proximity to Sasquatch, and at the same time as people are feeling this overwhelming sense of dread, and often like they'll describe it as an electrical charge going through them. So they seem, I don't know how they do it, but they seem to be able to send waves of electricity toward potential threats. And so, if you're getting too close to them, you may well walk into a wall of this powerful energy.
I probably hear at least once a month from a witness that said they were out in the forest, and all of a sudden, and they were chopping wood or using a chainsaw. And suddenly, they hear this inner voice that says, "I need to leave now." And they've always described they've never experienced that ever before in their life. They just know they have to leave now. It's very bizarre, but very consistent.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be a kind of an aspect of the same kind of thing. Like there's defense mechanisms that the species has that they must have evolved over time that are unlike the defense mechanisms, shall we say, of any other animal. And part of it is this electrical aspect, and part of it is the ability to communicate without speech. And this really does get into woo-woo territory, but through my research and through my experience, and I can tell you more about that, I've come to accept the fact that telepathy is real between human beings, and especially prevalent in the Sasquatch species, or especially pronounced in their species. I think they communicate with and a lot of listeners will just give up at this point, but hey, it's the truth. What can I tell you?
Well, I think there's some different aspects to it. I don't think you're completely off base. Because, I mean, they seem to have this innate ability to hide in plain sight damn near. Yeah. That it's almost supernatural. Like, it's almost like they're cloaking themselves. I'm not saying they're cloaking, but they have that really ability to blend in. And it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would much sooner accept the fact that they are affecting our perceptions and our minds than that they're actually disappearing or cloaking. Like some people think they step into a portal into another dimension. I think that it's more likely, at least I'd rather exhaust the naturalistic explanations within the laws of physics as we understand them before jumping to more exotic explanations. And I think it's more likely that they are either bending light with a sort of a field of electromagnetism around their body so that we can't see them because the light goes around, and so we see what's behind them, and they look invisible. I mean, they are invisible, but they're not gone. Or that they affect our eyesight. Many people describe them walking along and suddenly disappearing. And I think they really can prevent us for a period of time from perceiving, or they mess with our sense of time, so that what we perceive as them disappearing is really, that we're kind of in a frozen state for maybe 30 seconds, and then they're gone when we come to again. So it's all very wild and strange. It's kind of like a bottomless subject that you'd need several lifetimes to really do justice to. So.
I understand a lot of researchers would consider that fringe theories, like, well, whatever. But we're talking about a creature that's 10 foot tall.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP loan. You may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
Whatever you're funny, Peacock's got it exclusively. Stream classic sitcoms like The Office, Parks and Recreation, and 2.5 Men. Plus, catch Peacock original comedies like AP Bio and Saved by the Bell. For all your exclusive comedy faves, go to peacocktv.com and get started.
I've never been seen in the woods. There has to be a reason for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the cornerstone of all skepticism, is how the heck could giant ape men be loose around our forests and very ubiquitous, as I'm saying, where little micro forests near town can have these structures, and Sasquatch coming around at night. How is this possible? So I mean, I think that either they wouldn't have been able to sustain that kind of success over all this time, or they have evolved this kind of array of what's the word of I'm running out of words.
Super abilities.
This array of capacities and abilities to be stealthy, more stealthy than you can imagine, more stealthy than any human would be able to do. So, and once you hear 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen accounts of some of these more paranormal experiences, you have to just stop dismissing them. You have to accept the validity of these people's perceptions.
Well, one thing we do have, we have patterns. We don't have a body, but we do get, oh my gosh, if I had a nickel for every time I had somebody say something that's the exact same thing that somebody else that not even familiar with the topic, never even thought about a Bigfoot, tells me again and again. And so the patterns, aren't they, Christopher, just amazing to you?
Yeah, they really are. And one interesting thing when it comes to telepathy is that, sure enough, autistic savants are statistically more apt to be psychically gifted. I go into this a lot in a book I wrote called Mindspeak, one word, Mindspeak. And all these books are available on Amazon if anyone's interested. So in Mindspeak, I go through 20 different testimonials about people's differing experiences with telepathy with their local group.
Yeah.
Is it possible that these things are literally just an evolving just way to help them survive? It's, in other words, we probably had some of these capabilities and we've just lost them.
That really seems to strike a chord of likelihood for me. Yeah, I do think that, and many human beings are as psychically gifted as our next of kin are. But in our species, it's more sporadic, and it seems that wherever you have close and consistent contact or interaction between humans and Sasquatch, you have at least some of the family members will have reports of hearing the voice in their head or an image suddenly in their head that's definitely not their mind. They've never seen anything like this, and they've never heard a voice like this. One of the people, one of the accounts in my book about this is by Les Stroud, Survivor Man, and many of you will have seen his episodes of Survivor Man Bigfoot, and in one he talks about hearing the voice in his head, and it says, you can see us if you come over the next hill. And in his head, he said, "I'm not ready." Well, what he didn't say on that episode of the TV show is that when he got back home, he went to a doctor, because he thought he might be having schizophrenia. It was that unprecedented for him to have that kind of experience and to have a voice in his head. So it's not like the monologues that we all have in our heads all the time. This is a distinct, separate, autonomous voice talking to you in your head. The woman I talked about earlier in East Texas, at whose house I got the thermal footage, she was able to communicate with one of the local Sasquatch group, and I entered that with skepticism, and many things happened that eventually convinced me that it was the absolute 100% real deal. And I go through those things in the book Mindspeak, but the last straw was the last morning I was there on one visit. We were sitting out having some sweet tea, and I said to her, can you ask, the Sasquatch she was in touch with was a female, so I said, can you ask her if she could make a goodbye sound and tell her I'm leaving for the airport now, and I'd like to, if she could make a sound for goodbye for me. And my friend said, kind of looked off into space, and then she says to wait. I said, oh, okay, well, nothing's going to happen. And hardly had I finished that thought when from about 100 feet in the forest, bam, of wood on wood, a massive knock. And we'd been sitting out there for 5 days because it was a heat wave, and we had to sit outside because the air conditioning was too expensive to run. So we'd been sitting out there and not heard a peep for 5 days. And it was 10 seconds after I asked for that I heard it. And this was a culmination of many, many episodes that increasingly convinced me that this was legitimate. So they can do it. It's real.
What about what seems like violent outbursts where everybody walks away, but there's, the big bam into the cabin, the slap on the wall, the throwing things at homes. What's your take on that, Christopher?
Well, I think sometimes, there's a bell curve of different personalities and traits among the Sasquatch people as there is among our people. But so sometimes they're really aggressive and mean. There's lots of cases where they kill dogs, and there's an account in my book Out of Life with Bigfoot about a woman who witnessed the Sasquatch raping her horse. And a lot of them are much more peaceful. And I think most of the time when they knock on the side of the house at 3:15 in the morning or tap on the windows, they're just playing around with us, trying to get a rise out of us. I think they have this big brain and all this intelligence. And I think they crave stimulation, and they're curious, and they just they sense the kinship with us. That's why they often watch children. If you have a trampoline in the yard and your children are jumping on it, and you're, in suitable habitat, you'll likely catch glimpses of the Sasquatch kind of watching the kids jumping on the trampoline. They just are fascinated by us as we are with them, but again, they can't directly come to us. So they do all this cagey stuff, and I think they just like to prank us to see how we'll react. Just kind of like.
Christopher, do you think that's mostly adolescent Bigfoot that are going to test those boundaries like that and come to us?
I do think so. I think the grown females are at least what they're often seen with young ones, either a baby or just a little toddler or kid running around. And the males, the full-grown adult males, don't really present themselves unless they have to kind of, like put a stop to the hijinks. So I do think it's usually juveniles or adolescents that are less inhibited and they have more time on their hands because they're not responsible for feeding the family, etc., or caring for the children. So, yeah, I do. But what was I going to say? There's so much to say that it just kind of jumbles up in my head. We've been talking for almost an hour and a half, and I feel like I've just scratched the surface for you guys.
What advice, Christopher, would you have for somebody? And I get these cases 2-3 times a year. Somebody's got a bunch of land. They've got maybe a cabin on the land, and everything's normal for 20 years. And all of a sudden, they'll start hearing wood knocks around their home. They'll start having their cabin messed with at night to where it really is scary for them. Like their happy place is now gone because they can't leave. They own it.
Well, many people listening to this will remember the Snell Grove episode of Monster Quest, and a lot of people experience real real kind of assaults, and they feel like they're under siege. In fact, the woman I connected with in East Texas, she originally felt like she was under siege, and she called the Texas Bigfoot Conservancy, I think it's called, and she pictured that they would just come in a pickup truck and load the Sasquatch on there and take them away, because she wanted nothing to do with them. And then when she began to communicate with this one female, she kind of warmed up to them, but never really was that thrilled to have them around. And so there I come, full of boyish wonder, and she kind of got more into it with me. But people do feel under siege a lot of the time. There's a famous case called the Siege at Hanobia, in Oklahoma. Yep. The locals call it Hanabi, but it's spelled like Hanobia. So if anyone wants to look that up, you'll get a hair-raising written account of the siege that these people experienced in southeastern Oklahoma. So yeah, the types of interaction really are a spectrum from very, very benign to very, very malicious. You can't take for granted that they're going to be peaceful toward you. It's just that most of them are.
So my advice to most people is, hey, you've got a chance of a lifetime to embrace it. You could do some things to communicate, but most people, they go, I just want it gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to back to my innocence, when I knew that there wasn't some beast out in the forest banging, logs against trees and slapping our cabin at 3 a.m.
Well, you can imagine it takes a certain kind of person to turn that startling kind of sort of beginning into something like a curious study of this phenomenon. Most people don't have that kind of curiosity, or else the fear outweighs the curiosity. Like for me, when I go sleep by myself in the woods, we didn't even have time to get into what I've been doing the last couple of years, sleeping by myself in the woods where I've recorded them and letting them come to me. But, I get scared, but my fascination always eventually outweighs that fear. So I do it over and over again.
How close, in your estimation, are they getting to you when you're sleeping out in the woods?
Well, when I started sleeping out there this last summer, in the first 10 days I slept out there 4 times on still nights. There was a huge tree pushed over, and 4 different trees. And I later measured the distance at 80 feet. And I had 2 audio recorders going, one next to me and one over sort of in the direction where the tree came down. And although I didn't hear it myself, and it didn't pick up on my audio recorder next to me, the farther recorder picked up that after the tree came to a huge crashing landing on the ground, you hear pop, pop, a double tap on the tree, as if to say, there, I did that. And it wasn't, it wasn't just a random fall. And I've noticed a certain kind of whistle in 3 different locations that I sleep, all of which I've had up close and personal contact with them. I've noticed a certain whistle that is a very toothy kind of whistle. It's kind of but more like to make it with their teeth, which I can't do. And I've never heard that whistle either in person, either in my ears or with my on the audio file when there wasn't also wood knocks or vocals or a tree push. So I'm persuaded that that's them communicating through whistles. A lot of people hear them whistling.
Would you take that knocking trees down as an aggressive sign towards you, or do you think it's something completely different, like just communication amongst them?
I think it can be different in different situations. As far as that one tree push, I asked, I said, first there was a tree push 80 feet away, and then the next time I slept out there, I said, can you push another tree down for me? And it wasn't right away. It was an hour and 13 minutes later. You hear crack, 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 bang! And I said, thank you.
Wow.
And I was just so thrilled. Again, it was like the pine cone incident. I was just felt, I felt like anointed by their presence, or like, you just feel when you know you're in close proximity with a Sasquatch, and you know that it knows that it's there. It just kind of feels like you get to a sort of a sacred space, or a fundamental kind of ground of existence that you don't experience at all in your day-to-day life, and this is quite addictive.
Yeah.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP loan. You may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
I'm working on a full-length. Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm working on a full-length documentary that chronicles this effort to finally get good footage of them, either on thermal or on a night vision scope. And it's called How to See a Sasquatch. And I'm working on it, and I hope it'll be done next year or the year after. Once I get some first-class footage, and I just hope, I want to demonstrate the process. Like, anyone can do this. It's a 3-step process. You go and you find some interesting structures, then you put out the audio recorders, and if you record the authors of these structures, making their telltale sounds, then you screw up your courage and you go out there and you spend the night after night after night when it's not windy or raining. And you can, and if you're patient enough, you can eventually, you hear them, but if you're patient and persistent, you will be able to see them.
So when you're out there, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you're out there and you're camping, and you're talking like no campfire, absolutely still in the dark. I mean, do you try to be as stealthy as possible, or do you try to let yourself be known that you're there?
I let myself be known, but it's dark and I'm just lying there. And I like to go alone because I think once you have even 2 or 3 people, that you're less likely to have a good interaction because you're a group and they can think that you might flank them or try something funny. But if you're just by yourself and you make yourself vulnerable, I think that's best. And so I just lie there and I sometimes talk to them, especially after I hear that they're around. I will talk to them and say, my name's Chris, what's your name?
Have you?
And they never.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Many of our researchers listening, they carry firearms out into the field when they're looking for Bigfoot.
Yeah, I just think that
does that impact them? I mean, they obviously know, if they're intelligent thinking individuals, what a gun is by now. So
I think they're less likely to come around close if you have a gun.
Okay.
I mean, I have bear spray and I have a road flares that if a pack of coyotes surrounds me, but I don't have a firearm because I think that will be part of the energy you put out. And I don't think that will be advantageous to a fruitful interaction.
So your intention plays a lot into whether you're going to have a successful experience or not. The intention you're putting out
everybody there. Everybody who's done this for a while seems to agree that that's a huge part of it. And I don't know if they do this through extrasensory perception or just the way that animals, dogs, can sense fear and can sense aggression.
Mm-hmm.
But all I know is that I've developed a kind of a sort of a discipline just to try to remain relaxed and receptive, even if I feel extremely vulnerable. I mean, you have no chance if they want to do something to you, and you can tell yourself that they're not going to hurt you, but you never know. You never know for sure whether there's going to be one that is mentally ill or something, and just break you in half like a Zweibeck cracker.
Wow.
A lot of people think that you got to go way out in the wilderness to do Bigfoot research.
This is the thing. Yeah.
I've found that it's easier to do it within 20, 30 miles of your home because you have a smaller area that you can work, that you can study and research in. In many of these places, there's no dogs allowed. There's no hunting. There's places you can park, you can get into. it just makes it a lot easier. But I've also found that when I go into wilderness areas, I see less wildlife, but in the areas near cities or the edges, I guess, the edges are so full of wildlife and deer and wild turkeys and coyotes and foxes and bears. And so to me, it just makes sense to do it within reason of the edges. So is that something you do too? Camping? You're on the edge?
Really? Well, I mean, I've only done it that way because I find the structures and because I then hear them through audio recording. And it seems that the farther I go into the woods, the fewer structures I find. Mm-hmm. I think they just kind of they're drawn to our boundaries. It's kind of like they're a mirror image of us. I mean, we have our structures in our neighborhood, and then in the woods, not too far, you find their structures. Yeah. And they come around and do what they do in the nighttime, and we walk around and do what we do in the daytime. It's just kind of like this through the looking glass. And I don't know what it is, but I've really discovered, and so have more and more researchers, that you don't have to go out in the hinterlands. You can just conduct your research anywhere you find structures, and that can be 150 yards from where I'm lying right now on this couch. There are structures, and 50 yards up past that is where I've had these trees pushed down 80 feet away, and heard those whistles coming around and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to drive anywhere.
Yeah, because like for me, where I'm sitting, I go 20 miles out. I'm in some of the thickest woods in North America. And to think about it, I'm in Minnesota, northern part of the state. And to come to think of it, I haven't seen a lot of structures in the really thick wilderness. It is closer to town. It is 10 miles out, stuff like in the edges, like Doug had just said. And that does make a lot of sense now that I sit and think about that. It is closer to town.
But edges make a certain kind of habitat for any animal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's just a certain kind of mutual magnetism that our species have toward each other that encourages them to be operating and to put up their. I mean, I think it's again part of this indirect communication. Like they build their structures and they kind of dare us to notice them, and to be aware of the significance of them. And 99% of people don't. But if you know what you're looking for, it jumps out at you very, very obviously. And then you take the next steps, and you can have experiences with them. I mean, if people only knew this, it's what I'm trying to do in my books and this documentary I'm working on, is to let people know that you certainly can be with them in a strange way that they will allow us to be with them.
I've got a question for you, Christopher. Why do you think there's so many car sightings where they cross right in front of a car? You would think that they would hear them coming. You would think they wouldn't.
I know.
Long gone, but there's so many. I always wonder if it's like a rite of passage, or they're playing chicken with us. What's your take?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that probably sometimes it is that. I think it's probably a thrill for them. Again, they know they have a safe mode of escape right there because it's middle of the night, and they know the woods, and they can show themselves, but then 4 seconds later they're gone. So they get the best of both worlds. They get the thrill of freaking people out, but they're 100% safe. They never get hit. They know how to evade the vehicle, and so then they're like lickety split. They're off into the inky darkness on the other side of the road, and so it's both safe and dangerous at the same time. And it's probably like going to a horror movie where you're safe in the theater, but you're also scared. But there's you're absolutely that there's no real jeopardy going on.
What do you ever have activity in broad daylight, or does your activity almost always happen towards dusk or in the middle of the night?
In the ravine, in the middle, 2014, 2015, it was always in the daytime. I mean, I first started studying that place because I found structures, and I would record their knocks and tree pushes in the middle of the night. But then one morning I went to pick up my recorder, and I started hearing knocks, behind the thick trees. And I said, I knocked, and it knocked back, and it was the same kind of knocks that I'd recorded in the middle of the night. So it was obviously not some person just messing with me. And then I started coming back every morning, and sure enough, the same knocks would happen every single morning. So this was by day, and I filmed the juvenile Sasquatch by day. And so sometimes it is in the daytime, but lately this documentary is just going to be about nights spent out in their forest and see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And it does take guts. I mean, I give you credit. That's not alone. It's one thing to be with somebody. It's a whole other thing to be all alone.
It's more than twice as scary to be one person instead of two people. Yeah, it takes a certain mental discipline to kind of talk yourself through it. And sometimes you like get ready to go, and then you fail. Your nerve fails, and you say, "Oh, I'm not going to go." But most of the time, you push yourself, get out there, and once you're all bedded down and comfortable, you realize this is the place I'd most rather be on the whole planet Earth, because this is what I long for, is a chance to interact with this this ancient kin of mine.
Sure, I get it. It's the thrill.
I've got one last question. I'm just curious on your opinion. It comes up all the time. People are always debating. Do you think they migrate south? Do you think they stay put all year? Because you come from an area, you get a lot of bad weather, and you get a lot of snow. Do you think they stay all year?
I've recorded them in January here in northern Vermont with plenty of snow around. I recorded one yelling, very obviously nothing but a Sasquatch, because there's no houses nearby, and it's not a coyote. Yeah. Like, ah! 4 times in a row. So I think they stay here in the winter. I believe either the people who are talking about interdimensional travel are right, and they're interdimensional beings, and they can escape the cold, or much more likely to me is they've had all these centuries to dig underground. And I think, they've got plenty of muscles and plenty of hand strength and plenty of time that they could have built very elaborate underground dens, and then they simply hide the entrances and the exits under thick debris, and we never find them. I think they stay warm in the winter that way. I think that's why there's much less activity people notice in the winter, and they probably semi-hibernate, and and occasionally people find footprints, of course, in the snow. So I think that the adults sometimes go out and forage for food or hunt for deer or whatever, and bring it down in the den. That's my best guess, but nobody's ever found one of those dens.
So you're a proponent for kind of a meat eater in the wintertime and probably, berries and other plant material during the summer?
I don't know. I think they're omnivorous and that they get whatever they can. People see them with dead deer slung over their shoulders, very often. So I think they kill game. They hunt and they kill and eat meat and forage for leaves and berries and roots and everything they can. Like, they got to have a lot of fuel for those huge bodies.
Yeah.
Wow, man, has it gone by quick? We're out of time there, Doug. And boy, did this go by quickly. Christopher, why don't you tell everybody where they can get your books and where they can contact you if that's something that you don't mind happening, with maybe some of their own information that they're finding out.
Yeah, I've just been today corresponding with somebody who wrote me and telling me about their experiences. I really like that. So I have one of my books is called NextofKinNextDoor, as you can understand from what I've been saying, how close they are to us very often. And so the email address is NextofKinNextDoor@gmail.com.
Very cool.
The books are available on Amazon, and my YouTube channel is called Impossible Visit. and I have tons of videos on that channel.
Wow. Yeah, I'll be checking out more of your videos. Very interesting stuff. And folks, make sure you drop by our website too, which is UntolledRadioAM.com. Check that out if you want to hear more shows like this and enjoy it, and then also see who's coming up, read some interesting information. You can learn more about Doug and myself, all that kind of good stuff. Again, UntolledRadioAM.com. Well, we got to get out of here. Christopher Noël tonight was our guest, and he really brought a lot of interesting information to us. I got to say, I'm looking at Bigfoot in a little bit different light. I do thank you for teaching us all this, Christopher.
Well, thanks, guys. It's really been fun. I really appreciate you.
Yep.
Thank you, Christopher.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys. Doug. Take care of each other, love each other, and keep looking for Bigfoot.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Es mejor llegar tarde a casa que nunca volver a llegar. Es mejor llegar tarde al trabajo que nunca volver a trabajar. Y es mejor recoger tarde a tus hijos que nunca volver a recogerlos. Llegar tarde a donde vayas por esperar a que pase el tren es mucho mejor que arriesgar tu vida tratando de ganarle el paso. Por algo existe el dicho, más vale tarde que nunca. Alto, el tren no para.
Mensaje de Nitsa. Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan and proudly serves more than 600,000 small businesses across America. Millions of self-employed workers may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. So apply today. The program ends soon, and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply and see if you qualify for a PPP loan. Womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.